So if you consider, from infancy onwards, or you could even say really in utero onwards, we start developing a kind of worldview, right? This is the way beliefs about self, others, and world. We develop a kind of personal paradigm about the nature, et cetera, of the world. And if we're in a hostile or abusive or chaotic kind of environment, what we call developmental trauma, it's not always necessarily in the family. Maybe I'm in a war torn area, or maybe I'm experiencing a lot of discrimination, or, there could be lots of factors there. But anyway, if I'm essentially in a relatively hostile environment and I don't really get to experience much peace, and my beliefs about self, other, and world, reflect that, and actually become really problematic in many ways. There's a good chance as I kind of move and I get more and more developed that, my whole experience of self and world will reach a point where it's just no longer tenable. It's no longer sustainable. Like, it's just, there's so much distress and suffering and kind of chaos and pain and confusion in my whole worldview. This is theory, so take it what you want, but it seems to fit, really well what I and a lot of other people have seen. There's a kind of spontaneous process seems to be directly initiated by our own psyche. Like, this is no longer working, right? We need to break this down, kind of the fundamental layers of our whole cognition and cognitive constructs, and in the attempt to come up with something more wholesome, more adaptive, more present centered, right? And so rather than just, we're just going to kind of edit these beliefs, it's like, because the kind of most limiting beliefs are right at the very sort of bottom, you might think of a skyscraper with a rotten couple first floors are really rotten, right? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you replace those? And so in many ways, the skyscraper kind of comes crumbling down, in service of a new building kind of getting erected. But that process of that crumbling down is the psychotic break, right? Like, our whole constructs of self, other, and world end up becoming very flexible, they often can be very chaotic, but ultimately it's in service of being able to build something more robust, more present centered, more adaptive. And if all goes well, that's what we see. And my own research kind of panned this out, that people who actually are allowed and supported, and whatever the factors that supported them to get through to the other side, end up coming out in a much healthier place than what they went in. So if you measure their state of kind of mind prior to the psychosis and then after the recovery, they're often better on almost every metric. Their sense of joy and peace and love and just general functioning is generally better. So it's not that they just recovered; they actually went through a kind of profound healing process. And I found that again and again, in my own research, and I told you my own story, and I have so many other people with very similar stories. So it's not about romanticizing psychosis at all, because people can end up stuck in a really terrible kind of nightmare indefinitely, right? I mean, it's a real risk. It's not something you would want to wish on somebody. But ultimately, when it does move through, that's what you often see. And you can see that. So with psychedelic assisted therapies now that are kind of coming more and more prominent, I see that as basically the same thing, right? So when you take a psychedelic, what's happening in a way, you're kind of like loosening all the constructs of self, other, and world, at least for those few hours that the drug is taking effect. And it creates an opportunity for maybe something more wholesome to emerge or not. I mean, it depends on how that psychedelic trip is held, because it could make things worse for the person, right? But just like with psychosis, except you don't need the drug, you don't need the psychedelic. It happens spontaneously, and it tends to take a lot longer, and it tends to be a lot deeper